Good evening, and welcome to the third event in the Australian Academy of Science Public Speaker Series, Looking Back, Moving Forward. I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we meet this evening, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples. It is upon their ancestral lands that the Australian Academy of Science is built. As we share our own knowledge, teaching, learning, and research practices, may we also pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. I would like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders amongst us this evening, either in person or online. I am Professor Chennupati Jagadish, President of the Australian Academy of Science, and I thank you all for joining us, both here in the Shrine Dome, those online. This series is of such importance to the Academy and the wider scientific community in the country. Throughout the series, we aim to highlight the way the society can be informed and improved by listening to and engaging with Indigenous traditional knowledge holders. If the traditional and non-traditional knowledge systems can come together, the results and benefits are immeasurable. And this particular event encapsulates just that. Our two speakers speak working together, alongside each other, learning and respecting knowledge systems. There is so much we can learn from this work and these relationships. It is very special for the Academy to be joined by traditional owner, Mr. Dean Yibarbuk from the Arnhem land. Thank you, Dean, for traveling over 4,000 kilometers to be here with us. We're delighted to have you and look forward to hearing from you soon. Now, to continue proceedings, I'll hand over to Academy Chief Executive Anna Maria Arabia. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Jagadish, and good evening, everyone. It's a very special evening indeed, and may I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people, and elders past, present and emerging. I have a few housekeeping items before we go any further. If you'd like to join the conversation on Twitter, please do so by using the hashtag Indigenous Knowledges. Questions from the online audience can be submitted anytime throughout the event by scanning the QR code on your screen. And questions from anyone here in the Shine Dome with us this evening can be asked at the microphone during the Q&A session at the end. As Jagadish said, we're absolutely delighted to have both our speakers join us tonight, and of course to have Dean here with us in the Shine Dome. Tonight, Dean and Jeremy will be talking about fire. For a lot of us, fire is warmth during winter or potential destruction during summer. But for Dean and his community and Indigenous communities across Australia and indeed the world, fire is a crucial force, a sacred element representing a connection to ancestors, land, and a traditional way of life. It's also now a source of income and great benefit to communities and individuals. A quote from Dean himself sums it up. Fire is the answer, and fire is the tool. This is our landscape. This is where we live. This is what we want to protect. So now, let's hear directly from Mr. Dean Yibarbuk. Dean is a fire ecologist, ranger, and mentor. He's from a small community 530 kilometres east of Darwin in West Arnhem Land, and is the chair of the Wadakan Land Management, co-chair of the Indigenous Carbon Industry Network, director of Arnhem Land Fire Abatement, as well as co-chair of the Karad Kanjid Trust. He works closely with researchers from Charles Darwin University, rangers and land managers around fire ecology and carbon markets. To hear more, please put your hands together and welcome Dean.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to acknowledge traditional owners of this land that I am standing on and telling stories. I also acknowledge Nanawal and Ainbury traditional owners from the past and the present and emerging. I would like to thank him that me being here and sharing the knowledge of our people from thousands of years and until today. Thank you. Looking forward, looking back, I'm sorry, burning of knowledge that's been passed down from our senior elders that I was very, very grateful to them. That knowledge has been emerged, I suppose, in the public now. This knowledge of fire almost diagnosed in Western kind of practices, because many places, not only just in the Northern Territory, but around Australia, people always being unsure of the fire because they knew how danger that would being around their homes. But for us, Indigenous people in Arnhem Land, we kept fire going. When I was moving around, I could see a fire noticed by conservationists saying that do not burn the country or you'll be fined or go to jail. So that is, I captured those sort of momentums, and I was thinking really, really hard how to bring this fire understanding in a wider context and teach people of how to manage and look after the fire in the right way. Today, at home in Arnhem Land, we have been carrying this fire for over hundreds or thousands of years. The practices has been still happening because we knew this fire is the tools that we have used for over the millenniums. Not only just burning for our own sake, but the fire has a very ritual practices, histories of that knowledge that's been given to us about healing process, song lines, and all the other knowledges that we practice when we do our fire. Even after the death of our families, we purify our country so that our families could walk freely and hunt and gather whatever there is food and animals or fish within their clan estate. When it came to our understanding of a fire, it became a while. I think we've been approached by Center for Bushfires Research in CDU with Jeremy and his team. They were measuring a hotspot area where the fire took place for in the last 200 years when people have been deploying and went to the growth areas in the northern area. There was also Conoco Phillips company coming from Timor, putting a pipeline through the Northern Territory in Darwin, and they wanted to see a big area where they could see if these projects could, come in and help to, to make things, I think, understand in many ways. Also, were in other places where they would see the fire would bring in some sort of a income for people, which is we didn't have any very idea of what is began happening, but all our thought and our senior elders thought was the fire has been devastating in the places was, in a place where there were no people living no more. In the end, the traditional owners and the senior elders came together and started thinking of how can we put people back on the landscape once again and manage and live and do the early pre-season fireworks as it been done years ago. So we formed up the company called Wadding & Land Management with the support of a few people that I worked in the past and able to have these programs happening just to manage the fire. On the other side, not knowing about the carbon abatement program. Through that, before the whole thing, there was a government and a Conoco Phillips and a land council was having a meeting to get the company set up in Darwin. At that time when we were involved, senior elders was very, very pleased to see something being done about. And I was calling to step in and trying to work out how to get some sort of programs happening within this plateau where I live now. But all those knowledge that's been passed down to many of us, not only just myself, but other leaders in our communities came together and sharing and information about when people were living on the landscape. They did a lot of early season of fireworks to preventing the wildfires would have gone into the area. But this knowledge wasn't new to us, but it's been told many times over and over in that period. I think, and when we were looking back, the ancient time when people lived and managed a fire, I think there's a lot of spiritual connections that are being told to us. Lots of thinking of using a way of burning. We didn't put a fire there just for the sake of it. We lit the fire because of the way that the ancient rules that told us, our knowledge system that told us. Today, we are moving forward that I want to see both sides, traditional knowledge and the science knowledge. And now this program is up and running within Northern Australia. As you can see, our landscape, it's not so much of a forest that grows thicker and thicker, because it's been well managed from the past and opening up the whole regions, because people, the elders knew if they had a lot of rainforest or the areas were kept unburnt, that would have been creating a devastating fire would have gone through their area. When people live in this plateau area where I live, there has been a lot of burning was occurring at the time. But since the people left the country during the Macassan trade, during the colonization, people moved out, went to the northern regions, just because of trades and things was happening in particular areas, especially in Melangrita, Goulburn, in the Gove area, in the Groot area, all that area. There was a lot of changes was occurring at the time. But we kept that fire going even though the science was just telling us do not burn or you go to prison. That's not the case. Our people were still burning because of our cultural reason and obligation to do that. And today, not only just, certain, when the people moved out, we got this new way of bringing in, setting up the land management, because this is the only way we could see bringing in more incomes for our people to able to, survive longer, to set up our own programs, bringing in educations, bringing in the work that we, want to see, what elders want to see as well. Today we're using the modern technologies in science, flying on choppers, doing aerial burning, and it's changed from our knowledge, which is great. Having a toolbox, it's working together between the science and the knowledge systems. That's, to make sure that this process of burning need to be done again and bring those knowledge back on to our people so they can able to start moving back on the landscape and live once again and do the burnings. Now the technologies are taking very, we're seeing it's very, very important for young people to be involved. And for us, with the aerial burning, it's giving us more opportunity. We can see vast area where we want to put the fires, early breaks in the season. We also bring in traditional owners of each clan group within their areas, and we make sure they jump on a chopper and fly with the pilot to see the whole landscape where they belong, and they mark it out what areas need to be burned. Our rangers cannot just jump on a chopper and just go out and burn the country. There could be a problem and trouble with our ranger groups, but we make sure we include the traditional owners of the land that we go out and do burning. A lot of the traditional owners haven't seen the particular area where we are operating, but we've been bringing them in and also include them. I've been thinking that one day we want them to come back and live once again, and live and manage and protecting their own clan estate and managing the way it's been managed from thousands of years. We believe our guardians are up there and observing it the way we do. Even though today, as you may think of these animals and birds, there's a bird, but once upon a time they were human. But the changes occurred in that period of the time, many, many thousands of years, which we don't know of. But that story being told through the song lines. And the song lines is very, very powerful that we cannot put away or forget. This has to be continued, managing the right way. And we put those people in there, right people doing their own burning in their clan estate. We're bringing young people also to do the work, right people doing our work in their own clan boundary. We employ about 150 young rangers for casual workers each year, and that's a good sign for the traditional owners and our company seeing the numbers escalate from where we were in the past, and we're seeing these young people coming in and taking part of it, because it is their land that we are operating and managing and doing work. So we engage everybody together, between men, women, children. Event happens all year round through taking the whole family on a walk, but we cover up 80 kilometers or 50 kilometers each year for this event has happened. So making sure those families seeing the country that need to be managed, and one day maybe they would come back and live. And this is going on and on. Today, we want to see young people with modern technologies to able to, to learn. And one day there would be people that we want to see taking big roles, I suppose. This is an early pre-season fire meeting, fire burns. We do it every year, about this time around now. Once we get to September, October, everyone stops fireworks and keeping an eye out on the wildfires where it's been occurring. And when the one or two fires or three fires comes on, then all the rangers get together within our area and go out and try and do the firefighting. And they do great work. This is all these are photos, as you can see. As you can see, the whole landscape is much clearer. It's very easy to work on, because it's always been like this. It's never been area where we had impact of grass or trees that was growing. But the way that we've been burning this country, we open the space. Our animals has also come back on a burnt ground. And when they come back in the burnt area, there's a new shoots of grass coming out. And they really enjoy it as well. We manage the both sides for our families and for our animals as well. Because there's a rules and regulation that we need to, there has been to do work for them, for our living and for our animals, such as bird and many other small and big animals, such as kangaroos, wallabies, emus, all that. A lot of families or elders were very concerned about emu was an important animal. Once upon a time, the emu numbers were so great, heaps, but ever since people have moved out, less emu was roaming around. But the whole saying, the cultural, cultural understanding, when people move out, a lot of these animals move out as well. When the people live on the country, these animals comes back again because they know we're doing a great job for them. And that's the way, it was, over last millenniums ago. But when people moved out, those animals are gone. And we're trying hard to bring those animals back by using early, these fires. Today, our company, we're doing a monitoring program, biodiversity program, just looking for endangered species. And we're lucky enough, we're seeing these animals coming back. And we know the story that elders tell us, when you do a good fireworks, the animals will come back. Now we're seeing animals like emus coming back, numbers are coming back, growing up. We're seeing some of the endangered species are coming back on the landscape because we're doing a good fire management on the country. This is a location in Arnhem Land. In that map, I can see that this is where our Waddingan land management protected area, that's where I work. And this is a company called Alpha Unemployment Fire Abatement Program. This is all the ranger programs within our regions, work together. Some are new ones, some of the old ones has been there. There's Jalk, Wadigan, Mimal, Iralka, there's a lot of them, and ASREC as well. We're all doing the same thing, the same knowledge, same practices, same song lines that we have. And it's been a really, really great the way we've started, and now that everyone's putting, they're coming in and joining in, and they are very, very happy to be a part of it, because it is important for all of us within this area. Wadigan have started doing that firework, then we set up this Alpha Unemployment Fire Abatement. After that, there was a lot of other ranger groups starting to tap in as well within their region as well. In Alpha, we have a pre-season fire meeting. Everyone comes in together in the early year. We gather ourselves and we have a big meeting. We look back what we've done in the past, and we talk about our next things that we want to see going out and do, putting more breaks or get people involved, and we tell our stories about our children, our elders. Everyone's are all involved in this fire projects, and at least our elders and our community are very, very happy to see this movement is happening. And we all, work together and share our visions. And we're seeing, and there's a lot of talks about, training and all these other things that rangers need. There's new technologies, new science that they want to and develop their career pathways. And it's been brilliant. This is when we had the Alpha program, when Alpha groups was doing a burning, then this thing is, the carbon abatement became a real reality to our work, because through this burning, we can, we earn our own benefit. It brings back our benefit to our communities. So each ranger groups within Arnhem receive the benefit of doing their burning through that carbon abatement program. And we're seeing this is something that we haven't, we're really proud. And also, cut the government budgets that, very, very long time that we didn't see the government's input before. But in this way, got the company doing a fireworks and incubating a carbon abatement in this range is giving us an opportunity and investing our own money for our people as well. We share whatever that's, carbon money is coming out of, from our fire region. So it has been really great seeing what has been happening. Yearly, we have a meeting, pre-season fire meeting early year. The end of the fire season, we start talking what area that has been burned, what area has been, how successful that groups has been doing, and how well the whole fire program in Northern Australia has been happening. Some areas further down in eastern side, further down in the western side, we know that there has, there's a lot of farm and cattle. Sometimes people have problems, but they still do a lot of work as well, and we're proud of that, because we're not the only people in the northern area or in the territory. There's a people in the Queensland, there's a people in Western Australia taking that really, really great job and doing a similarity works and earning a good set of carbon abatement and bringing in the money to support their works. Just a couple of months ago, we had a Savannah fire meeting we set up as a Carbon Industries Network. This is, I sit as a co-chair, and we had this meeting just the last couple of months ago. As you can see, there's a great lots of ranges across, but also bringing in international people from Botswana and plus other states within South Africa as well. And it's been very, very great because the fire is an answer to our knowledge, and they wanted to have a try it as well. So Botswana today, I think fire management is starting, and it's for us in Australia, in Northern Australia, especially in Australia, we're seeing, there we go, our Savannah fire management is in other international areas, and that makes us proud because I think that's an answer to the whole countries that fire is a tool. Now I think we want to show you a video of the where this video has been made and telling more stories, and that's myself and Dr. Otto Campion. So can we have the videos on? Yes.
Before the colonization,
Volumes. Yes.
appeared, people were practicing, were leading fires. This has been happening for thousands of years, and this knowledge and this practice still exist. Cultural burning begins with when to burn and how to burn.
So I'm gonna light them up this area during like this time, Walir, which is August, September. We have to be careful because this red flower indicate the fire will be really, really hot during midday. Make this burn and then bring them back and then get them fire from here. We believe that every year country has to burn. That's our law. Fire understand us and we understand this fire.
So the important thing in regards to cultural burning and the rules is that this is sacred. The canopy is sacred. You can't burn the canopy. We're only here to burn the grass. And there's areas in country that we don't burn and to allow for those animals to go.
I started playing with fire when I was 5. Well, my grandfather, my father, I was watching them, and they were doing it safety for myself, for them, also for protecting some tree that have fruit. I know my country. I know all the plants, what I'm flowering, what I'm telling me. I know all the wind direction. When I grow up, I started to hear a big word, like for hunting word and ceremony language. Fire, it can be just like handling reptile, like a giant snake. We're playing too much with tail part. This snake will come back and kill us. We gotta be master, knowing how him behave, creeping slowly, that sun him go up, fire him speed up, wind him speed up, and then as soon as him afternoon, that fire him slow down, there's still plenty of grass there. Slowly him crawl, and then him sleep, him go out, and then start off in the morning. This is like a cool fire. The normal soil still there. Him didn't burn through, him still green. Long time ago, we had big mob old people living this area. If we manage fire B way or Yulmo way, we are doing right thing, cleansing all the spirit for our family to return and do hunting and gathering. Like new generation now, the knowledge nearly lost, and our elders, they wanted to bring back this fire management through doing good partner with scientists and government.
Across the globe, fire is a big issue when it comes to climate change. There has always been fire in this system, and it will burn at some stage. From a science background, in terms of hot destructive fires are not good. The smart thing to do is to manage the landscape as it was once managed before, and actually try to control the fire and implement a program that is beneficial for you, the wildlife, and everything.
In Australia, Indigenous people have set up carbon farming projects.
So slowly through our partners, working with scientists and getting older ranger group to earn money from this carbon program, that we want to bring back our tradition and keep sharing with other Indigenous people.
Carbon farming means managing vegetation to increase carbon storage. Through their deep knowledge and understanding of land management, Aboriginal people use savanna burning to manage emissions. Not only does it benefit the environment, it creates income, as they can on-sell the emission reductions to industries which need to offset their pollution.
People that undertake these carbon projects reduce emissions by about 30%. When you're talking about the savannas in Australia being 1.3 million kilometres squared, we're talking big areas, we're talking large fires, so the numbers do add up quite quick.
The burns are a delicate act, balancing between burning too little and not preventing devastating late-season wildfires, and burning too much that will devastate your earnings and the environment. A sustainable Aboriginal carbon industry delivers several benefits, such as slowing climate change, creating income for communities, and helping First Nation people manage traditional lands and waters.
Yeah, it's untouched area. Only me, my family, my mother, my sister, my brothers, my niece, nephew, we go and use this area. We still do our own tradition. We are practicing now, this new generation. We are eye and ears. We've got our monitoring tools in our system. That's where people connect to the land.
Our knowledge, this is very, very important tools that we need to keep using. Our knowledge is based in our mind, are not being written on a book. We're burning this country for thousands of years and never knew of what's been happening up in the atmosphere. Indigenous people never knew about the carbon. This knowledge has been here and still here. It's not gone yet.
Burning is always going to be a big part of the environment in Australia and other places and throughout the world too. Combining the Western science with traditional knowledge, there is a pathway there, but we have to work together to do that.
Having now worked with the Indigenous rangers up here for the last few years, I've learned a hell of a lot about keeping the fires smaller, more spasmodic, mosaic burning, and cool, gentle burns.
Cultural burning is not the only answer, it is part of the answer. That there's some country that hasn't been burnt for years, 30 to 50, maybe even longer. And in some of those areas in southern Australia where those big fires went through, those fires were burning country that hadn't been burnt for a long, long time.
Everybody needs to come together. Government, Indigenous people, and talking about the best way of working for the future generations.
We are traditional people. Let's come together and be Mala as a group, hold our hand together and stand up really strong.
Thank you very much for watching the videos. Thank you. Now it's a question time, I suppose.
Thank you ever so much, Dean. It was absolutely wonderful to hear about the cool and hot seasons and practices that have been carried down and being carried forward. You're absolutely right. We all need to work together. We will have an opportunity to ask questions, but first we're going to hear from Jeremy, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So hang on to them, write them down, don't forget them. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jeremy Russell-Smith. Jeremy's a research director of the Darwin Centre for Bushfire Research. He has over 35 years of experience researching Savannah fire ecology, carbon markets, ecosystem services and associated livelihood opportunities for land managers and Indigenous communities in Northern Australia and neighbouring countries. He joins us now from South Africa. Please welcome Jeremy.
Hugh, content coming through loud and clear? Okay, thank you. I'm just going to follow on from where Dean wonderfully left us. In fact, sort of going over a lot of the same sort of information, but maybe from another perspective. And the title here with work is actually the fire management program that people undertake traditionally in that sort of Western Arnhem Land region. And importantly, it's done mostly at this time of year in the season of watergang. It's the cool season that Dean spoke about. It's the appropriate time of year to get a lot of burning undertaken in preparation for things you want to do later in the year, including intense fires for kangaroo hunts and the like. Just going to indulge with a couple of slides. They're quite appropriate. On the left-hand side of my screen, I'm not sure which side it's on yours, is Otto Campion actually lighting fires using an ancient technology, a fire drill. And he brought those sticks from Arnhem Land as a gift to Sand people. And lo and behold, it's exactly the same technology that people in San and the Kalahari and the like actually use today. So it's probably a technology that spans somewhere 60,000 years at least. And the second slide, when it comes, is also from Southern Africa, Namibia. A few years earlier, Dean and a deceased gentleman on a trip with us, and they're just sort of saying hello to a type of ironwood which grows in northern Australia, very important medicinal and other functional tree. And Dean actually made the comment, "It's great to see you after 50,000 years." Looks like the slides are going to go a bit slowly here. Might be a bit of a lag. So just to put this into some sort of context, savannas, like the northern savannas of Australia, are by far the most fire-prone biome on the earth, annually sort of consuming about 75 to 80% of fire extent, but biomass burning, and producing a very sizable proportion of the greenhouse gas emissions per unit area, obviously not competing with sort of the peat swamps and the like of Southeast Asia, which go up every now and again. And so we're really talking about fire regimes in savanna landscapes that dominate from southern and northern Africa. That's by far the great proportion of landscapes which are burnt, and then to a lesser extent, Australia and the Cerrado savannas of South America. And in the Australian context, it is the savannas which burn on an annual basis, and that's not to belittle the occasional conflagrations, very serious conflagrations that happen down in your part of the world there, just amidst the 2019 25s, but you get the sense of fire extent in southern parts being at much less frequency in the north, somewhere like 350,000, 400,000 square kilometres of northern Australia burn each year. And when you consider that Tasmania is 66,000 square kilometres, you get an idea of the global context of North Australian fires in very sparsely settled landscapes. And the real problem is not the extent of fire in the north, it's the seasonality of it, that with colonisation, people moving to settlements, country being displaced, as Dean eloquently described, we've really gone into a late dry season, big fire regime with major biodiversity consequences and obviously global emissions consequences. So this has been the challenge, is how to do something about these late dry season fires, and in fact recognising that the country needed to be managed in a way on the basis of a traditional approach, fine scale, small fires, lots of them throughout the year. How do you replicate that? How do you do that economically? So in the top panel there, we're talking about early dry season fires before sort of August, September, when weather conditions get pretty nasty and hot and dry and windy. Small patchy fires versus the ones in the bottom panel, which are very intense, remove the canopies and burn over very extensive areas in a continuous fashion. The one on the bottom right-hand corner there from 2003 is actually in Kakadu National Park and would have well burnt over 1,000 square kilometres, and quite often on a pretty regular basis. So carbon markets basically came along post-Kyoto, that's 1997. And we've worked with Indigenous landowners, particularly in Western Arnhem Land, since that time to look at how we can develop accountable emissions reduction projects. That's the reduction of the gases, accountable gases, methane and nitrous oxide. And currently, or perhaps this year, maybe next, we'll actually have an additional sequestration methodology, which doesn't just account for the reduction of emissions from particularly late dry season fires, but the incorporation of carbon into the living biomass. It's the same sort of process involved. You've got conservative low intensity fires. You're going to get enhanced carbon sequestration in the biomass. In the soils, we're not so sure about. The jury's out on that. Very inconsistent results. Mostly savanna soils in Northern Australia, like in parts of Africa, are very infertile, and there's no real measurable bang for your buck by reducing fire intensity or frequency that is actually measurable. So maybe that's a carbon pool for the future, but it's not available yet. Just waiting for the slide to kick on. And so the Rudd government introduced a carbon farming initiative in 2012, and the very first approved methodology, carbon methodology that went under that CFI was our Savannah burning emissions abatement methodology. And there's been a number of revisions since then, but it's set up the formal regulatory framework that people can undertake projects against to reduce their emissions. It also directly links back into our national greenhouse gas inventory that credits earned, one credit being a tonne of carbon dioxide equivalent, every credit earned comes off our national account. So it's a linked regulatory system with a market outcome. So just to give a bit of an indication how this works in practice, and Dean's already given the much more interesting narrative approach to this, but that's Walfa, 28,000 square kilometres to the east of Kakadu National Park, 20,000 square kilometres. And there's also in an area that's recognisably one of North Australia's biodiversity hotspots. And the problem was with depopulation of the Arnhem Plateau. Saw those blue rivers draining off the plateau, and Kakadu there on the western side. There's the fire mapping available at the time from 1999, a satellite sensor called AVHRR, a kilometre pixel resolution, and basically showing that in the early seasons of 1999, no fire management actually taking place in that landscape. Some fires over there in Kakadu starting up as part of that program, but by the end of the year, a huge area burnt. Over the Arnhem Plateau, there's basically one fire that just kept on going and going, and no management in place, and the results were simply catastrophic. In the early 2000s, Dean mentioned this, Conoco Phillips needed to offset some of their emissions from setting up their liquefied natural gas plant in Darwin Harbour. Interestingly, Conoco Phillips is a Houston-based multinational, and the Northern Territory government, the Australian government, put it to Conoco Phillips that a most appropriate type of offset arrangement for our part of the world would be to actually support fire management, which you think about in the American context is pretty an interesting one, given up until very recently, North America has had a fire suppression policy well and truly. But anyway, Conoco Phillips eventually agreed in about 2004, 2005 to develop a long-term relationship with traditional owners in that area, which is called WAFMA in this slide. That's the agreement, Western Island Fire Management Agreement, and a 17-year contract to pay traditional owners to undertake strategic fire management to reduce late dry season emissions. And as I'll show in a bit, it has been fantastically working well. Going back a few years, 1996, really the start of our journey with the Western Arnhem Land community, friends and colleagues involved with the Northern Land Council. We put it to the Arnhem Land senior TOs, would they be interested in undertaking a journey, starting off with Natural Heritage Trust monies. Remember that was the sale of Telecom, I think it was, or Telstra. And we're well supported by the Commonwealth to really just get a whole lot of fire management in place. It was just basically building capacity at that stage. And beginning to recognise the incredible wisdom that was involved with traditional fire management approaches, and I would thoroughly recommend this source to anyone. It's a beautiful essay, The Language of Fire, written by colleagues, including a linguist and all senior traditional owners. But if you want a masterclass in how to manage burning around a jungle, for example, then this is well worth a read. And it also builds on the fact that there was a very structured approach to traditional fire management. It's not a random process, as Dean indicated. The landowners, their relatives in adjoining estates have to work out how the program is going to go through that year and then be implemented. It's a type of management reciprocity, which in fact could well have lots of benefits into contemporary fire management problems around Australia today. Very structured. And the journey continued through the years of the Natural Heritage Trust into the 2000s with the establishment of the bottom right-hand photo, the first Indigenous regional fire management committee in the Northern Territory. A big day, sort of finally recognising that the fire suppression era was no longer with us. We were going to move on to embracing a better way to manage fire. Dean's already gone through the sort of the processes here. Lots of patchy burning, particularly in early dry season. And on the right-hand side, there was aerial burning sort of out in the sort of the Savannah woodlands to protect a lot of the sandstone, rugged biodiversity from fires which will come from the southeast regularly each year. You've got to put a strategic fire management program in place at landscape scale. So this is just a little bit of a potted history. The top maps take us from up to 2004. That's prior to the implementation of the contract with Conoco Phillips. And you'll see the big red areas there, the big red splotches emerging every few years or so. These are the late dry season fires. And then with the project, in the bottom panel there, we see pretty rapidly after 2006 that there's a lot of green, a lot of patchy fires starting to be put into this landscape, and the significant reduction of late dry season extensive wildfires. Such that by just one example, late dry season 2014, if you compare the fire management program being undertaken in Walfer, all the green splotches everywhere, particularly on the plateau. Down the southeast, there's some large fire events that's in the sort of open woodland areas, compared with Kakadu, with very large, extensive areas. Even by, well and truly September 2014, Walfer had a fire regime that was substantially enhanced against a World Heritage National Park. To calculate the emissions, going back to that sort of hieroglyphics of the early regulatory framework, it's really a pretty straightforward process where it's a calculation of the area burnt, and we define Northern Australia under 11 sort of vegetation fuel types, and it's mapped on a sort of a weekly basis from MODIS imagery, 250 metre pixels. We've got a whole lot of baseline data on fuel accumulation in different sort of fuel components, 1 year post-fire, 2 years, 3 years, etc., etc. So we can work out any one pixel how much fuel there is prior to a fire going through. Then we have a consumption parameter, basically looking at early dry season, late dry season fires and different intensities involved. And then also take into account the sort of the proportion of the gases that are emitted that are the accountable gases, methane, nitrous oxide. We're not allowed to account under Kyoto rules and more recent IPCC rules for other very substantial greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide itself. And some years ago, we sort of just worked out that we were allowed to account for carbon dioxide emissions from Savannah fires. It'd be about 40% of Australia's whole inventory, and that is up against the fossil fuels as well. So let's get it pretty clear. Savannah fires in Northern Australia are a very major global emissions source. So using that calculation process, if we look at the bottom panel, it's really just showing the in the histogram there, the early dry season fires in green, the late dry season fires in red, and going up to 2006. Basically, over the whole Walfer area, 34% was burning under late season conditions and 9% early. Now, if you look at the period that goes up to 2017, it's sort of substantially reversed, and got most of it now in the early dry season. And that's not to say we're wanting to stop all late dry season fires. Late season fires have their place for a whole lot of fauna as well, for reducing woody plant thickening and the like, and certainly for cultural purposes. So it's about getting more of a realistic balance in place. And then you have a look at the top panel, which just is a calculation of the mean emissions from the pre-project era with what's happened with the project, very substantially reduced emissions. And it goes to show that, the whole sort of contract period was Conoco Phillips. Walfer delivered, apart from 2006, and every year very substantially on emissions reduction. And I think the whole world was a bit surprised by how well this project has worked. So today, that's basically the story, even though the image is from 2018. 1/4 of the whole 1.2 million square kilometres Northern Savannahs region is now under a formal regulatory emissions reduction project, and 75% of that is on Indigenous fully owned lands. And that's the last slide, just to show that early on, we were all recognised for doing a pretty damn good job. And as Dean's already indicated, the reason why I'm in Africa and at the present time is we're actually extending that work to fire-prone parts of southern Africa, from Angola across to Mozambique, and in other parts of the Americas as well. Thank you very much.
I think we all agree it's a pretty damn good job. Well done. Now, we have gone a little over time this evening. We would like to push ahead with some questions, but I completely understand if there are audience members who are unable to stay. I think you'll agree it was well worth hearing from both Dean and Jeremy. So if you do have any questions, may I ask that you come to the microphone, or Wendy, would you be passing around a microphone? There are others. Pop your hand up and we can get a microphone to you. And if there are questions from our online audience, please use the QR code, and Wendy, will be able to help us out with those. Yeah. Dean?
Hello, Steve Reed from ABAS. First, to congratulate both our speakers on a really engaging evening. But I've got the same question for both, because both speakers brought the same point up, which is that returning fire to the land requires returning people to the land. I wondered how we can do that across Australia.
Dean, did you want to take that one? Returning fire to the land means returning people to the land. How do we do that across? Returning fire, we need to return people to the land as well. How do we do that across Australia?
I think to ever, to return, it's really, returning, get the people back on the landscape within, in the area where once upon a time people left. For us in West Arnhem Land, it took us a long, long time to make these things happen by taking people back on a landscape for a short time of period, seeing the land that once upon a time they people lived and managed. And what they saw in that particular area, in the clanny state, is very, very devastated. Wildfires gone through, feral animals started coming in and destroying the upland wetland. Rock hard is almost had a black scorches through fire. And I think it's also our people, our community, and our government I wanted to see us just to live in the communities, in urban communities, and not thinking, putting people back in a clanny state. Perhaps when you're saying, how we're going to put the people back on the landscape, so I think we need to see both sides. It's a funding problems to be able to get people back on the landscape and to remain and manage the way it's been managed through fire management. I think that's the bottom line. You just need a government chipping in to make, get people back on the landscape. Education, work, preserving the country in the landscape is the only way that can happen. But what we're seeing today, earning through our fire management, in the long run, we will bring people back on the landscape by the carbon programs that we are getting money from. So hopefully, in the next 10, 20 years, we will invest that money for that reason, bring back people from the growth area to clan estate, and once again, people will remain and manage on that country as it was done from thousands of years. But this time around, having a school for our young ones and having a work within the region that we want to see people living in our clan estate area.
Jeremy, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Dean hit the nail on the head. It's ultimately a funding issue, and our whole approach here has been to look at market-based mechanisms. Happens to be that the market available to us has been a carbon market, supported by international climate change obligations and the like, but there's plenty of opportunity outside of carbon itself to look at other sorts of biodiversity markets, cultural markets, as such, and you'll see that the current government is actually looking at some biodiversity types of market propositions. There are good standards being developed, for example, through the Wentworth Group's Accounting for Nature propositions, and the scale at which this sort of management can be undertaken can be pretty vast. We look at our situation in the tropical savannas. It's about a sixth of the whole landscape, but then you've got the vast areas of regional Australia with Indigenous groups very keen to enter into market-based approaches, and I and colleagues working with Indigenous groups been looking at developing standards and markets to apply that sort of scale. It does require funding. It does require government support. It doesn't need to be all government funding, but it certainly requires regulatory frameworks, etc., to be very supportive of local and regional initiatives.
Are there other questions? Just at the back there, please.
Thank you. Jamie Piddock from the Australian National University and Wentworth Group. Dean and Jeremy, thank you so much for two very insightful presentations. I note in passing you both talked about use of fire to protect other fire-sensitive ecosystems like jungles or vine forest thickets. I wonder if you could just briefly elaborate on what kinds of ecosystems traditionally would be protected from fire and why, and how extensive they are.
I think one in the regions where I work and manage, one very important rainforest that still exists. Probably thousands of years ago, this rainforest was, dominated within our landscape up in the sandstone area. And that rainforest, or that's a special tree we call unbinic, with its scientific name is Otto Campion, was once upon a time was a massive rainforest before, but over the period, the country was been burning before how people said in, I suppose, or before colonization, or after colonization. So these trees, it's been scattered along the sandstone area. Now, patchy rainforest on the outskirts of the sandstone area. And we want to see, once again, that this rainforest having good, unique trees, regenerate them. Because they're the key of a family tree to the eucalyptus today. At least when we started to look into areas like where I've been working at, we marked out few trees, rainforests, and we're doing protecting, putting fire breaks around the remnant trees. And yearly, when we do our fireworks or doing our fire breaks around the rainforest, we're moving our breaks because we could see the seedlings coming up. And we have to move that fire breaks 3-4 meters away, or 6 meters away, because we need to give that each juvenile tree, plants need to grow and see the expansion of the rainforest. Because once upon a time, people believed that those rainforests was a place where our ancestors used to go shade down. It's a cool tree. They used to hunt within that rainforest. Sugarbike, bandicoots, and whatever that games was in that rainforest. But it's the last tree that we want to see, we've encountered, and start putting our management practices and see the expansion of that rainforest need to grow. Because we want to see that if rainforests grow for our generations, our children, our great-grandchildren would see that plants to grow again. Because I think it's a very, very ancient tree that is, need to be looked out at. Also, that the only tree that grows, trees that can grow up to 800 years, and after 800 years it just falls down. So that we do have a respect on it, and we put a plan of management, try to protect them and preserve them, to see that rainforest to grow again with the next future generations able to see and enjoy.
I'll take just 2 more questions, one from online, and I think the gentleman in orange, did you have your hand up earlier? Yes, so we'll go online first and then your question.
Thanks, Anna Maria. Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendy Wakwella, Communications Manager at the Academy. We've got several online questions. Unfortunately, we won't have time for all of them. Apologies in advance. This question came in quite early during your presentation, Dean, and it's from Paul, watching from Ngunnawal country. And this is a question, of course, for Dean. Dean, you said there was a period when your rangers would burn even when science said not to. How did you change the attitudes of local authorities?
I think by engaging through our practice, engaging with parks, Kangaroo National Parks, and territorial parks and wildlife, and a lot of the time they came to our our workshops and we shared our stories and the way that we want to see the practices need to be come back again, our knowledge need to come back again, and preserving, doing our fireworks, managing biodiversity programs and all that. So it took us a time to convince Parks Australia and Territory Parks and Wildlife Commission. Now, our Territory Parks and Wildlife groups in the Northern Territory are doing, working together with our Indigenous rangers. And that's a great effort and a great thing that I ever come across, and seeing these things are working together. So there's a two sides of it, yeah.
We'll just use the microphone so the online audience can.
Whilst you're here, have you connected with any local cultural burning groups in this area, in this country?
In what area, sorry?
Here in Ngunnawal country, have you connected with any cultural burning groups?
I think it's a bit difficult trying to, we have a annual pre-season fire meetings or conference happening in the Northern Territory, in Darwin, or in our local communities. And there's an open opportunity for this clan group from here who participate, come and listen. But also there's an issue. There's a grazeland, there's farmers, so they have to deal with all sorts of things within these regions. And in our case, it's our land. We lived and managed. We want to continue using our knowledge. But we are sharing our knowledge to many nations in Australia of our people. Start thinking, working together, bringing people together, and be a part of it, I suppose. And teach our children and teach their children as well. There's a room for people come in, and we can all sit together and work together and share our stories and share our knowledge. This is a new way of bringing our neighboring groups of Indigenous people across in Australia. We need to put our voice together and work toward the achievement of a fire project that has been happening for thousands of years. I know a lot of the countries in the western side of region in Australia, it's very hard for them to be able to, get things going. But, in the long run, my hope is that they will be doing their fire projects and fire management and coming in and talking to us and sharing our knowledge together.
Lovely way to finish, thank you. There is a tremendous amount we can achieve when we share our knowledge. I'm afraid we have to end the questions there. I know there were other questions, but in the interest of time, we'll leave it there. Could you please join me in thanking Dean Yibarbuk and Jeremy Russell-Smith for sharing their knowledge and their time with us this evening. A few brief closing remarks from me. If I may also thank our co-conveners of this entire series, Professor Tom Kama, Dr. Jordan Pitt and Vanessa Sewell. We're very grateful for their time and input into this series. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention the Academy's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Scientist Award. This award recognises research by outstanding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander PhD students and early and mid-career scientists. It aims to support their research, the expansion and growth of their research networks and international knowledge exchange through visits to relevant international centres of research. So if you are an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander PhD student or early and mid-career scientist, or if you know of them, I encourage you to apply for the award. The applications are currently open and they close on the 2nd of July, so please do spread the word for us or apply yourself if you're eligible. We've just heard at this event how well traditional knowledges can enrich and complement non-Indigenous science, and the aim of this award is so Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander awardees can provide more opportunities for these collaborations to take place with leadership from Indigenous scientists. More information on how you can apply is available on our website at science.org.au. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you for being here, both our online audience and people who are here tonight in the Shine Dome. It's been such an engaging and wonderful topic, and we hope the conversation, it was stimulating to trigger it beyond this evening. We also hope to see you again at the next instalment of Looking Back, Moving Forward. That will be on Tuesday the 8th of August. And the topic will be Caring for Land and Country, and will be featuring Shandell Cummings and Dr. Fiona Walsh. Thank you again, and good night.
Thank you so much.